Hey everyone, so today we're going to talk about common keto mistakes. And the reason I want to talk about this is because there is so much advice out there. Keto is in, and from YouTubers to bloggers to medical specialists, you're not always going to get the same advice, and sometimes it can be confusing, and sometimes the advice can even take you down the wrong path. It might cause you to gain weight or make you feel bad. So after a long trajectory of studying keto, from the long timers that have been doing it for many years in the medical establishment, I've picked up several tips that can help you know how to do it correctly so that you don't make mistakes. But before we begin, don't forget to click the subscription button below and the notification bell to be notified anytime there's a new video about health, about nutrition, about wellness, about relationships. Okay, so common keto mistake number one, alcohol. Some people can drink alcohol when on keto, depending on why you're doing it. People with blood sugar issues who are doing it, people who are trying to lose weight. However, not everyone can drink alcohol. Some people, if they drink alcohol, it will kick them out of ketosis, and they will not be able to reach their weight goals or perhaps even their health goals. Now, the reason I say some people is because research has shown, and it's true, that for some people with blood sugar issues, alcohol can actually assist with keeping blood sugars low, but it usually does kick people out of ketosis. Another thing to bring up with alcohol is not all alcohol is equal. If you are a wine drinker, whether that's red or white, you want to go for the driest wines, like the Cabernet Sauvignon in red or Pinot Noir, and then in the whites you could go for a Pinot Grigio or a Sauvignon Blanc. There are several others that you could try for, like a Chianti in red, and there's a lot of good Pinterest and bloggers and even websites that can give you a better breakdown of how many carbs there is in each glass of wine. They usually run about 3 to 4.5, depending on the type of wine. Another thing about alcohol is to pay attention to quantity. There are some really deep pours, whereas you could have a smaller pour. One thing that I did is I bought myself a wine glass that shows ounces on it, so I would know the difference in how big a 4-ounce glass is, how big a 5-ounce glass is, how big a 5.5-ounce glass is, and to try and start maybe at the 3.5-ounce point and see if that satisfies you, because obviously it will be lower in carbs, and move your way up slowly if you feel like you need a little bit more. Another thing is you can do low carb beers. There's a lot of great low carb beers nowadays. Regular beer is pretty much out because it is very high carb, but the lower carb beers can definitely fit into your macros. And finally, the pure alcohols are the best if you're going to drink. Vodkas, whiskeys, etc. really have the lowest amount of sugars or carbs, to be more precise. Alcohol is a little bit different than sugars, the way your body processes it, but your body is going to process alcohol first before processing other nutrients, and that's why it's so important to kind of get a handle on this. Most people would probably say it's not the wisest to have alcohol every day as part of a keto plan, but if you listen to anecdotal and even some of the experts, they will say that some people can get away with one smaller glass of alcohol a day if that's a necessary component of your lifestyle, or if you find it helps your cholesterol, whatever reason you enjoy drinking, it helps you with digestion, or just a social reason. Okay, number 2, sugar alcohols. Many people who go into keto start either using stevia, pure stevia. Sometimes they use artificial sweeteners, and sometimes they get into the sugar alcohols. Not all sugar alcohols are equal. Some really have no place on a keto diet, whether it's maltitol or some of the other sugar alcohols ending in OL. Some can really peak your blood sugar levels. But I'm going to talk about the most common one, erythritol. Many people like erythritol because for some people, it can help them with constipation. The taste, because it's made from sugar, basically it's a fermented type of sugar, is so close to sugar that they really enjoy the sweetness of it and the fact that it's got a cooling effect and less of a after effect. Also the fact that because it's powdered, you can confection it, all that, it's great for baking. However, some people, their blood sugar can be affected by sugar alcohols, so don't take for granted that you can subtract all sugar alcohols. There are different equations. Some experts or some expert units have developed the adjusted net carb ratio for this, where they just deduct half of the sugar alcohols as opposed to deducting them all. But some of the greater experts would tell you that you can't deduct them at all and that you should just be doing total carbs and they're not deductible. So really be aware of this as you start using this diet either for weight loss or health. See if you're getting results. If you're not, one of your problems may be your sugar alcohols. A lot of packaged products or a lot of keto desserts can sometimes use very large quantities, and this can put you out of ketosis. Fiber, we take for granted that fiber is deductible and that it doesn't affect blood sugar, and then the fact that it could even mute blood sugar level spiking. However, this is not the case for everyone. Some people's blood sugar levels can still be impacted by fiber. And again, that is why you're going to need to really pay attention to this and see how whatever you're doing is working for you thus far. If it's not working, another problem could be that you're getting in too much fiber, which might sound strange because we're always advocating for fiber for your digestion because of purported health benefits and the cleansing effect. But some people's blood sugar levels are affected by fiber, and they cannot deduct all the fiber. And again, that's where a total carb count calculation, as opposed to using net carbs, would be more beneficial to you. Also realize there's going to be a difference between fiber that is part of natural unprocessed foods like vegetables, whereas fiber from a packaged food can be confusing because sometimes manufacturers will put very large amounts of fibers and sugar alcohols into a food so that you think that the total net carbs is much lower. So let's say they will be putting very high carb ingredients for taste, and then they'll package in a bunch of fiber so that you do your calculation and think that the actual carb count is much lower because you're doing net carbs. So be aware of this. So to what I was saying, the net versus total carbs. My suggestion is if you've started out, give yourself the flexibility to start out with the largest, which would be 30 net carbs, and try this out for a couple days or a week and see if this works. If you're feeling any difference, if you're losing any weight, give it at least a week, maybe even two. You don't want to jump the gun. If you see that you're not really losing weight, you're not feeling better, nothing is happening, it could be that you need to drop down to 20 net carbs. Another calculation, once you've tried that, if the 20 net carbs is not working, is to try 30 total carbs. And 30 total carbs and 20 net carbs often come out to about the same amount, so they're a little bit similar. But if you're trying keto and nothing is working, I want to encourage you to then drop down to the 20 total carbs. That's what some people would call the prescription strength keto, because that is where you can really see if the keto diet is having an effect. Don't only go on how you feel, because there is, in the beginning, something called the keto flu. And that's going to bring me to my next point, which is make sure that you are getting enough sodium, enough electrolytes, and enough water in. Because if you're not doing these three things, you're going to feel bad. Don't forget, I know that in the old times when they told us to do low fat, they also said to do low salt. But in fact, people who are doing a low carb diet should be eating salt, because our body is flushing itself out more. And also, so you're going to need more electrolytes, more sodium, more magnesium, more potassium. So things like electrolyte water, bone broth, chicken stock can all help with this. So, play with that a little before you determine how you're feeling from the diet. The next mistake some people make is they are too much of a purist. They'll only eat organic. They think that they should never have an artificial sweetener or a diet drink. Or they'll completely eliminate any form of sweet from their diet. Maybe they'll go carnivore, keto, and this is great for your health. This can show numerous benefits. However, for most people, that's not going to be sustainable in the long run because it's too restrictive. So I encourage you to make gradual changes that are manageable and to not force yourself to be extreme. Keto will work even if you can't afford organic. There are certain organic products that are better for you, like for instance, pasture-raised organic eggs, because you're going to get there's a higher nutrient content that's proven than a regular egg. Or for instance, if you can buy an organic pack of strawberries instead of a regular pack because they don't have the pesticides, but it's not necessary to start having the initial benefits of keto if you can't afford it or if it's just not working for you. Okay, next problem, too many calories. Some people go on keto and they start eating fat like crazy, fat bombs, putting oil in their coffees, having a cup of cheese here and a cup of cheese there, and that will not only sabotage your goals, you could even gain weight on keto if you are overdoing the calories. Calories do matter. It's true that you don't have to count calories or counting net carbs, but if you see that you're getting stuck, it could be that you're having too many calories. And realize, that keto does not mean that, as long as you're watching your net carbs, that it's a free-for-all. You can eat just tons and tons of food in every other macro category. Next problem, processed keto foods, bars, keto cereals, keto nut butters. A lot of these have a lot of sugar alcohols, tons of isolated fiber components in order to drop the net carb content, and often this actually pushes up the total carbs a lot and can sabotage. So for instance, if you are on a total carb count and you bought something like a chocolate peanut butter bar from one of the big manufacturers, I'm not going to name names, that bar could have 20 to 25 total carbs. It's actually as much or more than your carb count for the day if you need to be on a total carb count. So realize that, whereas if you're on a net carb and that works for you, you might even be able to get in two bars a day. So realize that could be one of the places you're being sabotaged. Another thing is not following your own personality, thinking you have to do it a certain way. If when you wake in the morning you have a sweet tooth, no, you do not have to eat bacon, eggs, and cheese for breakfast. You can come up with a sweet alternative. You can come up with a keto pancake or a keto waffle. It's so important to stay in line with your personality, or you're not going to make it. The next thing is hidden carbs and sugars. You need to start looking at the nutritional info and the labels of every single thing you buy once you start this kind of a regimen, because what you'll begin to realize is there are hidden carbs and sugars in pretty much most packaged foods, whether it's salsa, whether it's milk, whether it's yogurts. Even if on the front container it says no sugars, low carb, or maybe even the words low fat still bring you in, although hopefully you know by now that you're not looking for low fat on keto. Low calorie, whatever it says, do not listen to the packaging. Packaging is there to sell, not necessarily to be 100% truthful. Turn it around and look at the carb count. Even things that are sugar-free sometimes have maltodextrin, dextrose, and something as simple as a Splenda, which here you think this is a sugar-free replacement, has sugar in it in another form. So look at for hidden carbs and sugars. Yogurts and cottage cheese. Some people think this is okay, some people don't. What you need to know is you need to look for the lowest carb count yogurt and eat small portions. The yogurt companies are catching on to the low carb, and they're starting to change their processes and make yogurts with lower carbs, but they still can be high. Regular, one of the lower carb Greek yogurts is still like 5 grams for their small container. There is the Too Good yogurt now, which is the lowest I found at 3 grams, and that's a really great alternative. Cottage cheese, you need to stick to small. You can't eat a half cup or cup of cottage cheese. It's got to be a couple tablespoons. Dairy in general, you might be lactose sensitive, and now because you're doing keto and you've gotten rid of carbs, you start eating dairy like crazy and you don't feel good. Well, you still need to be mindful of that. Just because you're doing keto doesn't mean that you can't eat foods. You should be eating foods you're sensitive to. And the last things I want to talk about are things that are kind of keto acceptable, but you have to be careful with them. Nuts, nuts, butters. Really, if you look at it, a nut butter, 2 tablespoons, it has 7 total carbs. That is a lot if you need to watch total carbs. So you're gonna have to keep it down to like 1 tablespoon. Berries, we always tout berries, but a half a cup of berries is too much. You're figuring up to about a carb per strawberry, for instance. So you really only want to have 2 or 3. You don't want to be having a half a cup if you can help it. And finally, there are some vegetables that aren't exactly starches, but do have high sugar content, so you still want to keep your quantity small. Famous onion, who would have known? Onions are high in carbs, so whereas in the old days maybe you cooked with a whole onion, start cooking with half or a quarter onion, which is nice because you also don't need to buy as many onions for cooking. You'll see that you still get a lot of flavor. Things like carrots, beets, and even tomatoes. As opposed to having a humongous thing of cherry tomatoes, content yourself with 2 or 3. You actually will notice that you don't miss the quantity as much once you become more aware. Okay, I would love to hear what your keto tips are, what kinds of things sabotaged you in the beginning, or what tips you realized really help you be successful on keto. And if you could share that in the comment section, that would be great so we can all learn from each other. Don't forget to subscribe, and wishing you a healthy and nourished day. Thank you.